Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We are going to get started in just a minute. If you have questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat. We have disabled the mics and cameras for this webinar.
All right, I just heard the bell chime for 11 a.m. So that means it is time to get started with our technical assistance webinar today. And I'm excited and fired up and do appreciate the privilege of your time today to join us. We've got some great presenters that have been fantastic partners to work with, and also great friends to hang out with, and love to talk about sustainability, innovation, technology, and those things that we can put together to help folks do their job more easily. So, next slide, please. Here's our agenda for today. I'm Cynthia Davis, and I am the SVP of Commerce for SustainSC. So I will be your hostess today. We're going to take a quick peek at our roadmap to SustainSC, and then we will launch right into the Sustainability Resource Guide with Andy Carr from SCMEP and Daryl Whitt from All Four. And then we'll wrap it up at the end. Be happy to take questions out of the chat. So make sure you put some good questions in there for us. And just as a reminder, we are recording this and our slides will be on the SustainSC website. Please also check out our upcoming events. And thank you for being a part of today. Next slide. Okay, so let's talk about the mission of SustainSC. So SustainSC is a nonpartisan, commerce-driven, conservation-minded, not-for-profit organization. Our mission is to connect the sustainability goals of businesses in South Carolina with local solutions for the benefit of our economy, our environment, and our people. Next slide, please. And we do this by meeting folks at the crossroads of commerce and conservation. And we do this with our strategic framework called the Roadmap to Sustain South Carolina. This was derived from our sustainability development goals that align with these priorities that you see right here. There are 7 accelerators, and first and foremost, is strategic partnerships. You know, we could not do anything without each other. And our SustainSC network includes members and partners from advanced manufacturing, mobility, timber, agriculture, government, infrastructure, applied research, utilities, and conservation groups. We all come together with that common goal of building the most sustainable state in the country. And we are doing it, y'all. We are doing it. So today, we're going to dive into innovation and the sustainable revolution. I'm very excited to, next slide, to have the strategic action delivered today. So with the South Carolina Department of Commerce, we are the chief sustainability officers of the state. And we love working with our companies in South Carolina and came up with this fantastic partnership with MEP, and they have developed, along with All Four, the Sustainability Playbook. The other things that we've been busy doing this year is showcasing our industries and best practices. So I hope some of you were at the MX.0 conference, and we were able to launch the guide there. And we're also hosting these technical assistance webinars like the one today. However, we will not be doing one in June, y'all. We will come back online in July with our Sustainability Leadership Initiative, our SLI preview. So those of you that are interested in doing SLI next year, Stay tuned. We'll have a webinar and we'll have the applications available then. So next slide. All righty. We're going to jump right in because I am not the star of the show today. The stars are really Andy and Daryl, and I want to make sure they get to tell you about this fantastic sustainability resource guide. So Andy, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Cynthia, and good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I know you're all busy and really appreciate you taking time out to let us tell you about the Sustainability Resource Guide. So again, thank you for being here. I'm Andy Carr, President and CEO of the South Carolina Manufacturing Extension Partnership. And for those of you that are scratching your head and wondering what a Manufacturing Extension Partnership is, we're part of a nationwide network. So you'll find an MEP in every state. We're the franchise holder in South Carolina. And we are part federally funded and part state funded. And our mission is to look after the small and medium-sized manufacturers in South Carolina. And that, by definition, is around about 500 employees or less. And when you look at the demographics in South Carolina, in fact, across the U.S., about 91% of our manufacturers fit in that category of having 500 employees or less. So, you start to ask questions around about sustainability, where it is in manufacturing. And, is that really something that is a topic of interest and concern to small and medium-sized manufacturers? Is that the kind of thing that a 50-person machine shop or fab shop is actually concerned about? And the answer is actually yes, it is. It has become very much so in the last couple of years. Emily, the next slide, please. Okay, so how did this sustainability resource guide come about? Well, it was actually a challenge by our team, the SCMEP team here, and also our board. It came about, I'm trying to think, probably towards the end of 2023, and something that we put on the calendar for 2024. But the challenge that we were issued was to actually come up with a resource to help the small and medium-sized manufacturers navigate that evolving landscape of sustainability, and particularly the reporting requirements. Because what was happening was those small and medium-sized manufacturers, they're typically always part of somebody's larger manufacturer's supply chain. And these conversations were starting to happen. What are you doing in this area? What are you doing in terms of sustainability? What are you doing in terms of reporting around sustainability? And that's when, clients started talking to us and asking for assistance in those areas. So we wanted to be able to help them navigate that. We wanted to provide educational content that was relevant to the small and medium-sized manufacturers, because a lot of time what we were getting and our field staff, our boots on the ground folks that have day-to-day contact with the manufacturers, like, where can I learn more about this? How do I become educated of what this is and be able to answer questions from my customers and sometimes from my suppliers around about topics in this area? What we wanted to do was actually be able to boil it down into some manageable buckets. And what you will hear today, a little bit from me and a whole lot from Daryl, is around about what we call the 5 pillars of sustainability. The other important thing for us and for our clients is to provide use cases, because it's one of those areas where there can be trigger words, there can be politics involved. But when you talk to most small and medium-sized manufacturers, their interest is in around about the dollars and cents. Can it help them save money? Can it help them keep business? Can it help them attain new business? So that was an important element of what we needed to put in the sustainability resource guide is, what does this do for you as a company and from a financial perspective? And then what we always like to do is we always like to include a list of publicly funded sustainability resources available to South Carolina manufacturers. We go with public ones because there are tons and tons of private ones, and there's always the risk that we'd miss somebody out. So what we do is we limit it to public ones. So that's a little bit of background around about the sustainability resource guide. If we could have the next, so the one thing at that point, was like we agreed and we signed up to do it. And then, myself, Tony Moore, our Director of Operations, we kind of started scratching our head. We had this challenge, this initiative from our team and our board. It's like, well, who's going to help us do this? Who's the subject matter expert? where are we going to get the horsepower from? And at that point, that's when we reach out to wonderful partners such as Sustain SC and Cynthia, who put us in touch with Daryl and all four. And that's how we figured out how we were going to bring this sustainability resource guide together. So a great partnership there. Basically, where are we today? Well, as Cynthia alluded to, we're very, very pleased to say that we announced that we launched the sustainability guide. That was April 2022 at MXO Southeast meeting or conference in Greenville. What I should say, guys, is this is a free download. It's available through the SCMEP website. And I think we've got a QR code for you to scan later on, but that's the link there to it. So again, no cost. Doesn't matter if you're a manufacturer or not. If you want to read this one, you can download the PDF, the searchable PDF, by following that link there. And again, it's one of those things that we will be talking a lot about this into the summer and into the fall. It was very much a launch at MX.0 Southeast. That's a mouthful this morning for some reason. But there's going to be a whole series of workshops and further webinars focused around about the pillars. Obviously, the first one is the one that you've kindly joined us on today. Our Up Exchange program, which is a peer-to-peer networking and best practicing group that SCMEP runs. We'll have one on June 18th. And they're coming together, but we will have future open enrollments. And again, you can find details of those on the SCMEP website by following that link. Again, the work began in December, maybe September last year. We had it pretty well wrapped up to January, thanks to Daryl and his team, a few revisions, and now it's out there. So what you'll find in the guide is those 5 sustainability pillars. Again, a focus on competitive advantage. What can these tools, these reporting techniques, what can they do from you in terms of establishing a competitive advantage? They also provide information on compliance and reporting guidance, energy and waste reduction strategies, which again is very, very important, particularly in South Carolina, because we know that our grid capacity is not all that it needs to be. And there's a risk that in future it may limit our economic development opportunities. So, using less of what's been generated is always very, very important. And again, I come back to guys, real world case studies. So you can see that the absolute trailblazers, what they're doing, why they did it, and what it did for them. So that's what you'll find in the guide. Emily, the next slide, please. I'm not going to go into these in detail. I'm not going to steal Daryl's thunder, but just to give you an idea, what are these 5 pillars that Andy keeps talking about here? So the first one is design for sustainability, and we'll touch on value analysis, engineering, life cycle analysis, and digital threads. We'll talk about compliance, and then particularly some of the standards that we find in sustainability, such as ISO 14001 and ISO 50001. We'll talk a lot about energy optimization and the benefits there of actually using less and saving some money around about this. There are also the waste stream reduction, the opportunities to perform recycling analysis and exchange of materials, and actually just boost overall equipment effectiveness. Make sure that your manufacturing plant actually runs better, produces less scrap, the machines run more, you optimize throughput, and again, you minimize energy use. And then the 5th and final pillar there is data and supplier management. Because again, like I mentioned earlier, even the small and medium-sized manufacturers, they're all part of a larger supply chain there. And that's where a lot of these pressures for sustainability reporting, sustainability compliance, and always to improve cost or to reduce cost, improve delivery, and improve quality. That's where they come from. And in that one, there's also again, being able to generate data and make smart decisions from actually collecting data from your plant and equipment. And then there's always the benefits of localizing your supply chain so that you're not having stuff shipped halfway or 2/3 of the way around the world there. So those very quickly are the 5 pillars. And at this point, I'm delighted to be able to turn it over to Daryl, who's going to dig deeper into this. Oh, and I promised you the QR code to download it so you can snap away. And I think the other thing, we will, of course, make copies of these slides and a recording of this available afterwards. So if you haven't been able to grab your cell phone and snap that just yet, don't fret. We do want you to download that guide. And we want to make it as easy as possible. So at this point, Daryl, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Andy, and also Cynthia. It's been a great pleasure working with SCMEP and SustainSC in developing this guide. And as Andy said, it's been several months. It's not fully been a 9-month process to birth this, but it has been quite an effort for us to go through this. And I really want to thank both of those organizations for bringing us in to this development process. Next slide, please. So as we were talking about putting together a sustainability resource guide, one of the key points that we want to talk about were what are the benefits of sustainability. We wanted to put in the text and make it available for people an understanding of what are the benefits of implementing sustainability. And as we have listed here, it really provides you opportunities to boost both operational and cost efficiency in your operations, whether that is reducing waste, reducing the cost of waste, improving energy efficiency, reducing the cost of energy, or making your operations more sustainable and more efficient throughout your production process. Sustainability also gives you the opportunity to identify and manage risks. Sustainability does present some real risks to companies, whether it is, extreme heat or extreme storm impacts or resource availability or flooding or, opportunities in the marketplace. All of those things can be related to sustainability. And a good, well-run sustainability program can help you identify those risks and manage them up front so that you minimize the impacts to your operations. It also allows you opportunities in the competitive marketplace today. We see regulations and requirements and interest from stakeholders and jurisdictions where we're doing business, all of which are interested in sustainability. And if you have a program in place, if you are being proactive in addressing these issues, it can give you real opportunity in the marketplace. As I mentioned, also waste reduction. If you're looking at these issues, it has the potential to help your company reduce waste throughout your process. And it does improve stakeholder relations and community relations. Everybody wants to know that the companies around them are aware of environmental and social impacts, that they are addressing them, and that they are sharing those concerns and engaging with their communities, their stakeholders, their employees, their customers, their investors across the board to address these issues in a meaningful way. And as we talk about sustainability, it is not a destination. It is really a pathway that we're on. And you can start with companies in our graphic here, that companies that are on the left, disordered, haven't really started trying to address sustainability issues. They have higher risk. They have some risks that aren't even known to them at this point. They may not have real good data management, and they don't have a long-term strategy for where they're going around sustainability. And as you move to the right, down this pathway, you become more aspirational. You become more aware of those risks, and you become inclined to mobilize to take action. And then become reactive, which is where you're meeting all of these needs, or you're seeing these needs coming and you're addressing them as they come, not really being prepared for them, but you're working hard to address them when they arrive. And then you get to being proactive. They're coming, you anticipate them, you're already working on them before they get to you. And then you can move into being more transformative and even regenerative in your business practices. And that's when we really reach a sustainable structure But even that, it's still a journey for us that we're still traveling down this path towards sustainability. Next slide, please, Emily. So one of the things we did when we were putting together the resource guide, we talked about the 5 pillars. Andy gave us an introduction to those, and I'll go into a little more detail. But one of the things that we realized is that there are a number of topics that we needed to be able to address and give a foundation for up front before we dug into the pillars. So we have a section of the guide that talks about harnessing the competitive advantage for sustainability. It looks at that trigger word ESG, which really only has to do with environmental, social, and governance topics. It's a term that's been used and changed over the years. Many years ago, I can remember 30 years ago, 3M was talking about people, planet, and profit. That was their sustainability framework. It's really the same thing today. It's just that they've now morphed into a term called environmental, social, and governance around the world. And we're also hearing it referred to as resilience. But it's basically just addressing these topics. And they are topics that are of interest to our stakeholders, to our investors, as to demonstrating that the company is aware of these issues and is managing them. Other basic topics, circularity, what that means. We've heard the term, but what does it really mean for business? Biodiversity is another one that we talk about. Greenhouse gas management. We've all talked about greenhouse gases. Some of us have developed inventory, some of us have not. But what does it mean to manage your greenhouse gases? And then decarbonization, another hot topic term, and to understand what it means to decarbonize a industrial business. We talked some about the risks and opportunities, what risks are identified through sustainability and what opportunities come to light if you're managing your sustainability. And then also the importance of public disclosure. Today, it's not enough to be managing these issues behind closed doors. People want to know what you're doing, and it can have a real positive impact for a company to disclose this information publicly. Next slide. So as Andy mentioned, there are 5 pillars to sustainability that we have identified and worked through in the guide. And those are design for sustainability, compliance for sustainability, energy optimization, waste stream reduction, and data and supply chain. So with the next slide, I'll start talking about the first of these pillars. So the first pillar, design for sustainability. Well, what are we talking about there? We're really talking about the upfront process of looking at your operations and understanding that when you design your facility and your operations to be sustainable, it can have a positive impact throughout the rest of your operations. So we look at some of the tools that are available for helping companies design to be sustainable and minimize their impacts, both environmentally and socially, and managing those. So we look at life cycle assessment. What does it mean to perform a life cycle assessment on your products? What does that include all the way from your raw material extraction through your manufacturing process, through the end of life of your product? And understanding what the impacts of that process and the materials that you use are. And then a similar topic, environmental product declarations. Once you've done an LCA, how do you make that information consistent, reliable, something that your customers can refer to and utilize in their operations? And that's really with an environmental product declaration. And that's a standard statement of what the impacts of your product are. We also look at LEED certification. That is more for your operations, that if you design your facilities for LEED certification, that makes those workplaces more energy efficient, more comfortable for employees, more pleasant for employees to work in, and it becomes a place that they want to come to work. Energy Star, we talked about it. It's unfortunate that that may be going away under the new administration, but Energy Star is still an important tool for evaluating the energy efficiency of both our manufacturing operations and our products. And hopefully that will stay in place, but certainly the tools that are used through Energy Star will continue to be of value. A digital thread is something that you design into your product so that you can keep track of where that product is in the manufacturing process, how it is performing, so that people can keep track of it. It gives you the opportunity to trace your materials from raw material through end product, understand the impacts of it, and helps companies keep track of and manage that and identify opportunities for improvement. And then finally, in this section of the guide, we have a lot of design tools. We worked with SCMEP and identified probably 30 different tools that can be used in designing your facilities and your products to be more sustainable and to design them more efficiently. And there are links throughout of all of these different tools that are available for companies to use. Most of them are free or relatively low cost tools that are available to you. Next slide, please. Okay, so our second pillar, compliance for sustainability. As we all know, we're all dealing with a very dynamic and changing compliance landscape when it comes to sustainability and also environmental issues today. The United States compliance landscape is changing significantly under the Trump administration. There are a lot of changes going on in all of the environmental regs that also include sustainability, where previous administrations had programs for sustainability at the federal level. Many of those are being withdrawn and reviewed and reevaluated right now at the federal level. And what is happening is we are seeing a lot of state level regulations being developed kind of to fill the void, kind of to make sure that what states wanted to be happening continues to happen. A very good example of that is the climate-related regulations, climate-related disclosure regulations in California. They will require companies that do business in California that are from anywhere in the US, not just California-based companies, but any US-based company that does business in California over certain revenue thresholds will be required to report to California under these climate regulations. There are other states doing the same thing. New York has regulations that are about to come out right now, as well as Washington and Oregon and Colorado and Illinois, and several of the other New England states have regulations. So there is a complex landscape for sustainability regulation in addition to other interests. There are also international sustainability regulations, particularly out of Europe, but we also see them out of Southeast Asia. For example, Hong Kong and Australia are now in line with this, and China has just released some new sustainability regulations for companies as well. So companies that are doing business internationally, companies that are doing business with customers who are doing business internationally can be impacted by these regulations. And then also on the compliance front, we also look at stakeholder drivers. They may not be regulatory driven, but they are still requirements for companies to comply with. If your investors or your customers say they want you to do it, you end up having to do it, whether there's a state or federal regulation or not. And then we also in this section talk a lot about the various reporting frameworks, standards, and rating organizations that all come into play when we're talking about compliance and reporting for sustainability. Next slide, please. Okay, so our third pillar in the guide is really focused on energy optimization. So we talk about energy use. How do you optimize your use of energy? What are some energy efficiency projects that you can look for? And we give you we don't go into great detail anywhere in the guide, unfortunately, because we just don't have room for it. But we do give you a good understanding of energy efficiency projects, what might be available out there, everything from boiler tuning to looking at heat pumps, looking at motors and engines, and how you can optimize that equipment, what you should be looking for to make those processes more efficient, how to perform energy audits and the benefits that you can get from those. And when you're doing an energy optimization, looking at the building envelope, it's not enough to look at each individual process equipment piece, but you also got to look at the building overall itself to make sure that you're not wasting energy just because of poor maintenance on the building or something like that. We also look at solar and other renewable energy sources and the feasibility of those technologies, where companies today are concerned about the energy availability either through fuel sources or through the grid, and whether or not it makes sense for those companies to implement renewable energy on site. We break those down a little bit for you in the guide. Then we talk about cost reduction strategies, because energy cost is a huge issue for everybody in manufacturing. It is one of the largest components of your overall footprint, overall balance sheet. And we provide some guidance on how to look at cost reduction strategies to make your operations more efficient. Also talk a little bit about demand response, so that if you are in a tight energy market, there are ways that you can respond to the energy costs and variations, and also maintain your operations. And then we also look at the efficiency of renewables in this section. Next slide, Emily. Then we talk about waste stream reduction, and we look at what do we do about waste. We are trying to deal with a circular economy that reduces the raw material extraction from our environment and goes more into recycling and reusable materials, so that we develop a circular economy. And this section of the guide talks about zero waste strategies and circularity. It also talks about identifying waste stream types so that you can better segregate those, better manage those, and improve your circularity and recyclability of your products. It talks a little bit about general waste management practices and waste reduction strategies, and what benefits you can really see by implementing these strategies in your operations. As we go forward, there will always be concern about what are the benefits, and I think waste reduction really has some good opportunity and can show some real benefit to manufacturing operations. Next slide. Okay, so the last pillar is about data and supply chain, and it covers a lot more topics, because one of the keys to all of these pillars in operating all of these programs, implementing sustainability across the board, really requires good data management and a good understanding of your supply chain. So this last pillar talks about data and data management and your supply chain. One of the first things we talk about, it's kind of a common language and a common first building block for companies talking about sustainability is their greenhouse gas emissions inventory and their carbon footprint. So we go into explaining what are scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 emissions. With, scope 1 is the fuels that you burn within your operations and the emissions from that. And then scope 2 being indirect emissions from the purchase of utilities, whether that is electricity, steam, or hot or chilled water. And then scope 3 is your supply chain. Those are indirect emissions related to raw material extraction, transportation, supply, getting all of those things to you, as well as your employees commuting to your operations, business travel, and then the production, or excuse me, the transportation of your product away from your facility, who incorporates that product into their overall product, the use of that product by consumers, and what happens to that product at the end of life. All of those components go into a comprehensive greenhouse gas inventory, and we talk about that and help you understand what's included in that and give you some good guidance on where to go for more information to develop your greenhouse gas inventory. And then we also talk more about data collection and data management in the areas of energy, in the areas of water and wastewater use, and in waste generation, waste management, to help support all of those other programs and all those other pillars that we talked about. We help you get your arms around the data so that you can really see what you're doing, understand what the impacts are, and identify those risks and opportunities that are available for you through a comprehensive sustainability program. And then we also talk about some tools that help you with that data management along the way. Next slide. So as I said, the guide is out there. Here's the QR code again and the link to it. The guide is about 120 pages, and we have more than 100 links, active links in the file for you to go to get even more information, more detailed information on all of these topics. There is a great index in the back of links. And as Andy said, we've also got several case studies of companies, many of which are located here in South Carolina or have connections to South Carolina, that you can look through and go look at what those companies are doing to better understand what sustainability can mean for you, and how to take advantage of these programs and learn from others. And with that, I believe we will open it up. I will say thank you again, my contact information there, and I believe we will now open it up for discussion and questions.
Thank you, Daryl. Fantastic overview of the SRG. And thank you, Andy, for your support. This was, part of yours and the board's idea to do this, and it's worked out beautifully. We have some time left. So about 5 or 10 minutes for Q&A. Daryl, you did such a good job. They're speechless. But it was
Well,
a very.
I was
Go ahead.
also just thinking that the SRG. So now we've got another 3-letter acronym within sustainability.
Right. We needed one.
We needed another one.
And that's also in this guide. You have an appendix that has the acronyms. Oh, good. So Shay Davies, I think you'll need to put it in the chat. I don't think you're able to turn your mic on. So if you'll type it in the chat, we would love to entertain some questions. So Daryl, what was the most challenging part about putting this guide together?
I think really the toughest part for us was putting together a team that could cover all of the different topics well. I mean, we had so many different topics and so many things that are really included in sustainability. It's a very broad topic. It's not something that you have a single expert who covers it all. So bringing together the team with expertise to address all of the individual topics well, and make it flow in a comprehensive document was really the biggest challenge. And then, once we had the right people involved in the process, each of those individual pieces flowed pretty well.
And it's turned out beautifully. So we do have a question from Nikki McDill from SLI Class 3. And she is asking, is this guide geared more to assisting small businesses? So is this just for small businesses, or could medium and large businesses glean some information as well?
Yeah, Cynthia, thank you, and Nikki, thank you for that question. Yes, I mean our client base is small and medium-sized manufacturers. So basically, from 1 and 2 employees up to 500. So yes, we're the South Carolina Manufacturing Extension Partnership, so there's a manufacturing bias in it. But I'm sure Daryl and Cynthia would agree with me that there's information in there that's applicable to all businesses, not just manufacturing. But again, very much a focus that it wasn't written for Fortune 500 companies. It was written with our client base, small, medium-sized manufacturers in mind. So I would think you would find assistance in there if you're at a small business.
Absolutely.
And I will also say that, we were focused on the topics. So they are topics that certainly impact small and medium businesses, but they are also topics that impact larger companies, where a small or medium business may have one person who's wearing 6 or 7 hats who needs to try to understand these topics. That's where we were focused on giving them a basic understanding, basic information to get them started, give them the links to find more information. Larger companies still have to address these topics. So if you are the greenhouse gas person at a large company, you'll still find resources in the guide that can help you. Or if you're the waste minimization and recycling person, you're still going to find information that's going to help you in this guide.
Absolutely. And that's part of it, being that sole source, that go-to place when you have a question 24/7, you could look it up in the guide. Let's go to Shay Davies, and this is a question for you, Daryl. She asked, could you talk a little more about how you help companies assess their carbon footprint, referring to one of the last slides?
Sure. So the term carbon footprint, there are a couple of different ways that it gets used. One is just talking about the overall greenhouse gas emissions from your operations. And that's really what we call a greenhouse gas inventory. So it's total emissions from your operations. And we help companies with identifying the sources of information that they need to track in order to be able to quantify that. Much like an air emission inventory for an environmental permit, we use primary data, or what's called activity data, which is your energy usage, your fuel usage, what greenhouse gases do you use in your process, and when do those get emitted, to help you quantify what those emissions are across your operations. We also help companies look at what are the boundaries, so we make sure that we identify what is yours and what is not yours and what fits into the various scopes. And then we help with the actual quantification of those emissions. The other way carbon footprint is used is if you're looking at of your product. So it would be like greenhouse gas emissions per automobile manufactured. And that is going into a little more detail of both the total emissions and how you allocate those emissions to the individual products within your process. Again, we help companies go through that process, and I'd be happy to talk in more detail with you offline, but those are the two basic things that go into a carbon footprint and
Assessment.
quantifying that.
Mm-hmm. Great. Okay. Let's go on to Catherine Min. And this question probably is for you, Andy. Do you have any plans to track usage and implementation of the guide?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And Catherine, thank you for your kind comment there. Yes, we do. So, basically what happens is you follow the link, you go to our website to download it. It's totally free, but we do need a little bit of information. And that is basically name, email address, and the company there. So what will we be doing, as we have with some of our other downloadable guides? There's also one on workforce development. There's also one on advanced manufacturing technology. That's what we track. We track the download there, and that is in our CRM system. So we know the companies, we know the size of the companies that are downloading that. In terms of tracking implementation, yes, there's a business development aspect to it. So, there's lots of ways to engage with SCMEP and all four throughout the guide. Page 11, you will actually see a link there to a sustainability assessment survey that we offer, under the section how to get started. So that's something that we will also track, is the number of conversations that it generates, and hopefully the number of projects that it generates. So yes, we do have tracking mechanisms in place, Catherine.
Great question. Okay, the next one, Beth, I think yours was already answered by Emily about our sustainability leadership initiative. So I'm going to move on to Mike Demos. I really appreciate the case studies. How did you go about selecting the companies for these case studies, Daryl?
So looking at the companies to do case studies on, we were looking at the topics that we were covering and thinking about what companies either in the state or are nationally or internationally well known for having programs in those areas. So we were selecting those companies based on initially individual areas that we wanted to emphasize. But then as you looked at those companies, many of them had much more comprehensive programs that were great examples, great role models for many of these different pillars, many of the different topics. So they were identified as being good case studies and good references for companies to look at, to benchmark themselves, and also to look for ideas and opportunities to learn from other companies. And we were also looking for, where we could, companies that are located in South Carolina. So, we did include BMW and Milliken in there, and a few others that, and as I said, they're very comprehensive programs. So they're great role models for smaller companies to look at.
Yeah, I would say that was the question that Daryl got asked the most, is like, where are the companies in South Carolina? Let's feature them, or at least feature companies whose supply chain has companies in South Carolina as well. So it wasn't always possible, but wherever possible, that's what we wanted to do, was feature a South Carolina firm, or a company, a manufacturer with facilities in South Carolina, or at least purchasing stuff from South Carolina.
Exactly. Okay, let's go to Matthew Williams, and he asks, Andy, I believe this is for you. Since the launch, have you already experienced feedback or adoption? If so, any specific industry or size of business that you can share?
So at this point, we launched it, I think, what are we looking at, maybe 3 weeks ago? Have not done a deep dive into it yet, Matthew. And that's something we'll certainly be taking a look at. We have had feedback. Most of the feedback so far has been from our partners. And obviously the resources that we list in the back of the guide, we checked in with them before and made sure that, they were happy to be included, and we incorporated a suggestion. But in terms of manufacturers, no, not yet. That's something that we'll probably let it be out there for, 1, 2, maybe 3 months before we start to dive into that. Most of the feedback, as I say, has been from partners. It's been very, very positive. And again, thank you for the question.
Yes, and I would also say, if those folks here on the call today, once you take a look at it, if you have feedback or you have additional questions, please reach out to Andy, Daryl, or myself, and we will make sure that we incorporate those questions, that we take that feedback, and don't be surprised if you see an iteration in the future with the feedback and comments that we do get. Okay, so let's go down. Anybody else have any other questions? I really appreciate that. Oh, here we go. So this is from Namika. Does the guide provide information on regulations like, and then there's alphabet soup, Daryl, if you can see it. Also, does the guide provide information on international reporting guidelines for ESRS, GRI, and SASB?
Yeah, really, really good question, Namika. We tried to focus on sustainability related topics. So where TSCA and FIFRA and REACH, those programs are more environmental compliance topics. We did not address those in great detail. We may still have some references, particularly with the waste related ones in that topic, in that pillar. But as far as the international reporting guidelines with GRI and SASB and CSRD and CBAM and ESRS, and I know I'm throwing a lot of acronyms and Greek out there for folks, but yes, we did address a lot of those and do have some information in there, and certainly references to those resources for further study. So,
yep, thank you, Daryl. And if people
if anybody needs those acronyms broken down, just speak up. We could do that for you.
Send you an email. Well, I was going to say, our partners there at South Carolina Office of Resilience, our partners at South Carolina Department of Environmental Services, there, if someone needs help on that, I feel certain that we could reach out to one of our Sustain SC partners to help with that information. Okay. All righty. So next slide, please, Emily. I want to remind everybody that on our website, you can always check out our events we have coming up for our Sustain SC members. On May 22nd, a biodiversity and healthy workplaces workshop that's taking place here in Columbia. Very excited about that on Thursday. And then coming soon in September, the date will be released very soon, our third energy roundtable that will dive into grid modernization in Columbia. And then, of course, want everybody to put on their calendars, save the date now, our fourth annual Sustainability Symposium. It will be at Central Energy, as we have had it in the past, and those dates are October 22nd and 23rd. We will have 2 days of programming this year because there are so many things trending, hot topics, and information we want to make sure that we are releasing to folks in South Carolina and our region. So next slide, please. Just a reminder to like, follow, tag, and share Sustain SC on all of these social media outlets. We are constantly posting good news about what our members are doing. Also, we have white papers, we have information on our events, and like we said earlier, today's slides and recording will be posted under resources on the SustainSouthCarolina.org website. Next slide. And of course, we could not do this unless we are working together. Each of us feels that commerce and conservation comes together to make for an incredible, sustainable environment here in South Carolina that we love to live, work, and play in. So just want to say thank you again to everyone for spending this past hour with us, and a big thank you to our special guest speakers, Andy Carr with MEP and Daryl Whitt with All Four, and stay in touch. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
all.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thank you, Emily. Thank you, Daryl.
Awesome job, guys.
Thank
Great.
you. Have a great day, all.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.